Welcome to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership, where you'll hear insights and useful strategies, as well as lessons learned from other nonprofit leaders and valuable tips from a variety of experts. Here to help you with the challenges and opportunities you face day after day is your host and nonprofit leadership expert, Sarah Olivieri.
Hello, nonprofit leaders, and welcome to your go-to place for information and inspiration to help you be even more effective. I'm your host, Sarah Olivieri, and you're listening to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership. My guest for this episode is Kyler Beal, the founder and director at Minivan Productions, a video production firm that has found its sweet spot humanizing brands, organizations, and products by creating media that moves donors, investors, audiences, and you and me. I met Kyler a number of years ago, and I was just so impressed and inspired by his work. I wanted to invite him on to the show. His company, Minivan Productions, is based out of San Diego and works worldwide with purpose-driven organizations as they help develop, implement, and execute on content strategy, which, you might be going, oh, what's that? But video is content. And so I want to introduce Kyler. Welcome. Before we dive into our topic today, talking about content and where video fits in, would you just tell us a little bit about yourself personally? Because I love to address people as whole people for our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, we're based here in San Diego. My wife and I moved out here about 3 years back, and so the whole company moved because Minivan Productions had already existed in Virginia, which is where Sarah and I connected. And it all started out of the back of a minivan. And so Minivan Productions came to be when we took a couple cross-country road trips and found a niche in being able to find corporate sponsors that wanted to be a part of the journey. And so North Face, Patagonia, Otterbox, all of a sudden we're like, hey, we'll send you product and resource you. When we got back from that trip, we built a travel vlog style video that was super popular at the time. And a few years later, it came to kind of launching a video production company. And it was like, what do you call it? And I wanted to do something really cool and flashy, like vector marketing. And but then all of a sudden I was like, well, all of my favorite companies actually just have really fun story built branding. So why not do something like that? And that's when Minivan was born. So that was 5 years ago. And now we're 5 years in, have a staff here in San Diego. We're in the North Park neighborhood, and really just love this idea of kind of co-vocational living out here in San Diego.
I love it. So today we're going to talk about video, content strategy, how to think about investing in it. And I'm really, really excited about this topic. So let's just talk about, big picture here. Like, why would you do video? How do nonprofits develop a content strategy that actually works, right? Like, what's step one there before you even say, because I think a lot of people, you're like, oh, you should do video, right? But that is not where you should start your content strategy with just some board member or somebody says you should do video. It starts way before that. So take us into those first steps.
Yeah, obviously content is king, but that also implies that everyone knows what they're doing, and that's not the case. And making content for the sake of making content, you end up with nothing, just a bunch of wasted energy, probably time as well as finances. So we really push our clients into understanding their ideal donor profile, their IDP. ICP, ideal customer profile, is much more common. But if donors are seen the same way as customers, all of a sudden you're able to build a content funnel. And so we start asking questions to understand, who are you really targeting? And often for nonprofits, the question is kind of twofold. They usually say, our current donor profile is X, but we actually wish it was Y, or we're having trouble accessing this new donor profile. And so, for example, let's say you're the Phoenix Rescue Mission and you're trying to find a new niche because most of their donors are 65 plus and they're worried about what does this look like from a longevity standpoint. So we help them develop philanthropic Paul. And so Paul, we understand his income, we understand his education, we understand his age, his family status, where is he most likely to be seen.
And Paul's who they're trying to reach, as opposed to, right? Yeah.
Correct.
Because it's hard. You can't really reach like Paul and Karen, right? If Karen's like a very different type of person with one video, would you ever try? Or would you always say, no, we need to pick a focus?
Always focus, for sure. Yeah, it's not that you can't reach them both as an organization, but your messaging, your content, everything needs to be tailored toward, let's say you have 3 different targets, that's fine, but the content needs to match.
Yeah, I love that. That's always been true with marketing, but I think it's just becoming even more important as the amount of content that our brains, all of us, just it's an onslaught. And so I think our brains are getting better and better and better at filtering out everything that's not for us because there's way more than we can possibly handle. So if your message is at all fuzzy or blurred, just gonna be like, nope. I was cleaning up my email yesterday, and I rarely look at kind of the bulk mail, but I took a moment to clean a few things up and do some unsubscribes. I like to do it on my phone because I can swipe to delete so fast, and it's just like delete, 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 delete. And occasionally I delete one that I wasn't supposed to. I was like, oh, was I supposed to look at that? But it is really it was a game of how fast can I get rid of stuff. And I'm judging on like the first half of that subject line. And so if it's not really specific to me, you're getting deleted without me even reading the full subject line. And that's just email. So really, really important. So how about you can tell us a little about, thinking about cost, right? Because a lot of people go, oh, if you're doing video and good video, if you've ever priced it out, you might have had that, oh, that's expensive, right? Or it costs a lot of money. And just talk us through the thinking. I'm a huge fan of, you need to be thinking about return on investment. Actually, yesterday I was doing a webinar with Bloomerang, and someone asked, how much does it cost? And they know how much it costs. But what I warned the audience was like, hey, the question you need to ask is not, can we afford it? If it's anything having to do with bringing in money, the question you need to ask is, what's the return going to be compared to how much I'm spending? So take us down that rabbit hole to be thinking about, how do we figure that out? Like, how much is a video going to return?
And I think that's something that nonprofits especially do all the time. You're going to host a big event, you're going to host a gala, and it's like, this is going to cost $500,000 to host this event or to bring in this speaker. And everyone's looking at, okay, but we're going to return $2 million on this big event. So obviously that's worth it, right? That's 4x ROI. But for some reason, content feels like unapproachable in that way of, oh, we're going to make a bunch of video or take a bunch of photos and write a bunch of blogs, but it's just for brand building. And I think that's the wrong way to look at it. I think, like you mentioned, everything should have an ROI. And so instead of saying, can we afford it, or is there leftover in the budget to create something cool, we often take our clients back to, like, what are your goals? If you need to increase giving by 10%, do you actually have a way of doing that other than asking the same donors for more money? And I think that changes the way we look at content. So when we build our content strategies, it starts with, what is your goal? Let's say it's to increase giving by $500,000 in the next year. Okay, well, in order to do that, we're going to create these 15 videos and we're going to roll them out in this pattern, and that's going to walk people through the funnel. And so we start with awareness content, and then we into consideration, and then decision stage content.
For those who don't speak marketing, can you just take us through, give us an example, what's an awareness? What are each of those pieces in there?
Yeah, I love it. Awareness content is to help your audience become problem aware. And this is really what gets forgotten in a lot of content strategies. Most of the time, brands are creating decision stage content. That's stuff that says, hey, sign up now, give now, buy now, purchase now. And that, in theory, has the best return, because the answer is they can say yes right away. There's a CTA. But the problem is that only 5% typically of your target demographic is actually ready to donate or to say yes, to sign up, which means that 95% of your target demographic, this is not like random people, 95% of your target demographic are not ready to make a decision. And that doesn't mean that they're not valuable. It doesn't mean you shouldn't target them, but you need to start with problem-aware content or awareness content. So again, Phoenix Rescue Mission, let's say everyone there knows homelessness is an issue, but they don't know that homelessness itself is not actually the issue. It's probably a substance abuse thing or a lack of support or the inability to find resources. That's really the problem. So you're making your audience problem aware. Then once you've seen people kind of engage and get caught into what you guys are doing from a problem standpoint, what you're solving, you can move into consideration content. And that's when we retarget to show your audience that, hey, we know that you're aware of a problem. Now we're going to show you that there actually are solutions. But this still isn't necessarily saying, hey, we're the only ones that do that. Because realistically, most organizations have crossover where there are multiple organizations doing something similar. And so you're still just saying, hey, this is just a solution to that problem. And then you can really target them with decision stage content to say, not only are you problem aware, you're also aware that, hey, there's a solution to this problem or this opportunity. And now I know that you're the best at it. That's when your USP or your unique selling point kind of comes through to say, we're the best at what we do. And that's why you should give here, sign up here, join us for this event. That's kind of the funnel we walk people through.
So important. And, for those of you who are kind of still tuning in to this, concept, different people talk about, problem aware differently, but I really like to think about, if you think about a medical diagnosis, right? You start by you become aware of symptoms, right? All on your own, right? Just like you might have a fever, right? That's a symptom. That's not the problem. The problem isn't the fever. The problem is you have the flu or you have, something else. And so what you're talking about is first content that helps people say, oh, symptom homelessness is a symptom. But a lot of people don't realize that there is a problem behind it. And so you help people learn about that problem, bring them along that journey. And then you teach them, well, also not all solutions are created equal. I remember when I was in college, I studied abroad in Tanzania in East Africa. And there was the symptom, people were getting sick with malaria. And malaria, in a way could be the problem, but the underlying problems were not at the time. This was before Bill and Melinda Gates decided to tackle malaria. So no one was really researching it because it doesn't really affect first world countries. And so there weren't really good medications. And of course, the mosquitoes are infested and people are getting, bitten. And so they decided to create a solution to give people mosquito nets. But was that solution a great solution? Well, in the end, it was a bad solution because in areas where they were basically their economy was off of shrimping and fishing, like for shrimp, they used all the mosquito nets to catch shrimp and none of them to prevent mosquito bites to then prevent malaria. So, not all solutions are created equally. And I think for those, when I think about nonprofits, my mission with nonprofits to make them the best at innovation in the world. We need to be shining really great lights on our innovative solutions and really talking about how they're working, why they're working, what's really cool about them. And I think video is such a great way to do that. Okay, so not to get too off track here, and I'm sure you have lots of good stories. Would love to hear them. So how do you start to track what is possible? And if you have any examples, I'd love to hear them about tracking this return. So you make these series, this funnel, you take them through this content. What kind of results could you get? And how do you know that you're getting those results?
Yeah, this is going to sound potentially outlandish if you're in the world of sending out direct mail and seeing 1.5x ROI or even less. Sometimes you're just doing it to build a brand and know that you're going to have maybe not the return that you hope, but we're seeing 90% of our clients getting 10x plus ROI even in the donor spaces. And I think what that comes through is that you're tapping this untapped audience that we talked about. So that 95%, all of a sudden you're not competing with people who are already considering giving to an organization like yourself. You're saying, hey, there's 95% of these people out here that have no idea that they could get involved or that there is more to life than not being involved in purpose-driven organizations. And so we use things across the board. So if we're doing digital and paid spend, there's millions of ways to track how people
that's the brilliance of digital these days, right? If it is going out on the internet, you can know. Right? You can just know. It's all trackable on the internet.
100%. Every click, we use things called UTM links, and that actually helps you understand how people are getting to your website, not just, hey, they clicked this link to get to our website, but we can see the last 6 things that brought them there. And that is all readily available and free. If you're an organization using Google Tag Manager, we set this up for a lot of clients even before we do any work with them, just so they can understand where are people finding us? How do they understand us? So Google Tag Manager is a huge free software that most of your websites are probably partially already connected to. And if you could just tap into the analytics that it has for you, you would understand your donor base in a whole new way. So how do we track it? It's one, understanding those tools and being able to say this person is coming here from X website, and before that they came from social to get to that website, and then they read our blog. We know that they're really interested in the data and the science behind our solution. Or you're like, oh, someone came from this testimony video that we created, or this blog that was a journal on your story when you were studying abroad. It's like, okay, these are two different people that need different types of content, and that's when you're able to retarget with correct kind of the next step. Because those people don't need the same stuff.
That's right. People need different things. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I have plenty more questions about this topic. So we will be right back to continue this very fun and dynamic conversation with Kyler Beal from Minivan Productions. Today's episode is being brought to you by Pivot Ground, which I created to help people like you, executive directors, board members, and other nonprofit leaders. I want to help you unleash your full potential to advance the missions that I know you care about so deeply. And in order to help you do that, I have put together a weekly newsletter where you will get just a short amount of tips, because I know you're busy, each week in your email box. And you can access it by going to pivotground.com/sign up. There will also be a link in the show notes. Okay, Kyler, I want to ask you about, what makes the content, how do you know if it's working? Or what do you, before you even figure out if it's working, what are some of the things because you've made a lot of content, a lot of video content that are great starting points that are likely to work? And then how do you confirm that it's working once you've got that in place?
Yeah. I want to kind of take a step back in my story just to kind of show where this kind of evolved from. But after high school, before I went to college, I took a gap semester and moved to Guatemala. And I was kind of doing multimedia journalism at the time. Photography was kind of my home base, and I loved it. And so I was translating down there for an organization called Manos de Jesus. And while I was down there, the stories were endless. And these people were incredible, living up in the villages of Chichicastenango. And I was documenting it with photography and then telling stories through blogs, and people were really engaged with it, and it was great. And yet it felt like it was falling flat compared to these people's actual stories. You could get a snippet, but you couldn't see the whole story. And so that's really the season of life where I fell in love with video. So that was kind of step one. I was like, hey, video translates more than photo. I don't know how, I don't know why, didn't understand it all yet, but I want to get into video. So I got into video, and then eventually, long story short, Minivan Productions started. And then we went through an iteration as well where we saw all of our content. People would love it. People who saw it thought, man, this is great. This is either going to motivate me to donate, this is motivate me to join a mission, to understand purpose-driven leadership. But only 2% of the people who needed to see it were seeing the content. And then we saw that there was a distribution problem. And that's when we kind of pivoted as an organization and said, we need to bring part of this at least in-house to understand content strategy and distribution, because you don't know if your content's working if only your current followers are seeing it. Even if you have a huge following, those people are already dedicated to your mission.
Of course, they're going to love it, right? So, it's like your mom. Your mom's probably going to love everything you do, hopefully. If you don't have that kind of mom, go get a new one. You can borrow mine. Right? So the people who are already your raging fans, they're going to continue to clap on. But yeah, how do you know? You have to get enough data from the right data set to start to know if it's working. So keep telling us more. How'd you start developing this magic?
Yeah. So that's when we kind of said, this is it. Let's be a part of all the way through solution-centric mindset. So our kind of our tagline even as an organization is helping organizations create solution-centered storytelling. And so I think it's just been an iterative process of how do we continue to stand on that promise. First, it was understanding, hey, video really is where we can find solutions. Then it was saying, hey, video is great, but we're actually not able to see a return. We don't actually understand it all. And so we brought digital strategists in-house to be able to say, not only do we have the storytellers and the people who are able to direct and evoke trust with a donor profile, but now we have people who are able to get it in front of the right eyes consistently to the point of conversion. And so I think a lot of organizations look at their organic following or their organic engagement and say, oh, we have so many followers, or this got so many likes, or so many views on YouTube even. That doesn't necessarily mean your content is working. That just means someone is seeing it and they already like what you're doing.
It's got to be, and you got to keep that end result in mind and keep focused on that. I'm wondering if you can just tell me some of the stories that you've been a part of telling through video that you think that just stand out to you as just to inspire our audience. Because I think so often, I'll give you an example is, I have a client who's always feeling like, oh, what we do, people don't care about as much. I have two clients who are often prone to that. One is around after school music education. And she's always trying to tie that to the outcomes around leadership development, adult skills, increased academic performance, more likely to get into college. And so just the other day, I was like, you should have a video, right? Because that can tell that story and bring those things together. So I'd love to hear some of your stories about content you've created and the ability to bring something out, right? That is hard to bring out in other mediums.
Totally. I think even just on a kind of global scale is if you care about it this much, there's a lot of other people that care about it and have, even if they don't quite know how to access it, that doesn't mean that no one wants it or that your story doesn't matter. I think that's a huge misconception across nonprofits and commercial brands to think that, oh, so-and-so doesn't like our stuff or they aren't going to be able to be a part of what we're doing. That there's so many people in the world that you can access these days. A couple that kind of come to mind, I'll give you one nonprofit and one commercial kind of example, just to kind of show the difference. But in the nonprofit space, for a while I was working on feature films. And so with organizations like Voice of the Martyrs, we were over in Romania. And I think we were filming with actors, but replaying Richard Wurmbrand's story. And the way that Voice of the Martyrs started, and he was living through World War II and starting to preach the gospel in places that it was not accepted in any way. And I think our crew, there was about 400 of us on the crew for that project, and I'd say probably 380 of them had no understanding of the story itself before we started and no understanding of what it would look like to potentially follow Jesus with their life. And as we're reading through this script and everyone's starting to get on board, they're like, what is actually happening here? And even through the replaying of the project, that's now seen millions and millions, hundreds of millions of views across the world. And people want to attach to something even before they believe in it. They don't have to understand and want whatever is actually happening on screen, but they can be inspired and feel like they want to be a part of something. I think that's really what we're all after to some extent, is how can I be a part of something bigger than myself, even if that's not the words you might choose to use. And I think video does a really good job of that. I think photo, probably because of all the social media trends, can feel a bit fake. And not that photos are in any way dead. Photos are beautiful and really can tell thousands of words in one photo. But there's something about video where the emotional sense of, I want to be like you, or I want to do life with you. You just can't translate that in
I think that's partly because, even if you've just stitched together some photos to make a video, you can show change and a journey in video the way you can't in a photo. It makes me think, my son who's 11, who loves YouTube shorts, sent me, somebody had just made using ChatGPT or some AI tool, a video generated, completely AI generated. And it was the story of this little duck. And it practically had me in tears. And it was just no text. It was just kind of a montage of this cute little duck's life with some music, right? And maybe you can touch on music can really change the tone. And it just went through, the duck was born. He had a good childhood. Something sad happened. He went to college. It was great. He found new love. His love died when they got old, and that was the end, him looking back on, his wife who passed away or something. And I was like, this freaking AI generated little video just following this formula. I mean, I have no connection to anything that I particularly care about. Just a journey of life had me practically in tears. And then you put that into something that's real and that I actually care about, and, it would blow me away. But if it can do that about just something trivial and made up, it is so powerful as a medium.
I think we're attracted, like you mentioned, to change, to movement, to progress. A lot of people in organizations even say, we set these huge goals, and if we hit them, we see a dramatic fall off in production immediately afterwards, because then what are we chasing at this point? And I think that's where we kind of found ourselves creating media that moves donors, that moves messages, that moves culture, because that is what we're creating. Like, these organizations are not stagnant, but you need some way to showcase that so that people can come along for the ride. And that actually goes back to some of our branding as an organization. Like, we want to come along for the ride with you. We're not coming in to say, hey, we're a video production firm, we're going to create this really good commercial and you're going to love it. We're going to say, hey, how do we be a part of your culture, understand your culture? But that's the same thing you want to do with your audience. You want to let people be a part of your change, your movement.
Yeah, and going back to your origin story too, right? You're literally in a van taking people on a journey. And to tie that, to donors, you said this, I always say, in some way or another, donors want to be able to say, I helped make that happen. And the way you keep them engaged is by taking them along the journey. Like, your staff are in it every day. And if you want to have great, nurturing communications with existing donors, you just keep feeding them every week bits of, this thing that was good happened, this thing that was bad happened, this thing that was neutral, it happened, right? It just happened. And you bring them along the journey with you so that they feel a part of it, so that when something good happens, they can say, I was there, I helped make that happen, I walked with them. So yeah,
we talk about we a lot. Like, how often can you get your donors to say we?
Oh, that's really good.
So that's not like, oh, they did something, and that includes transparency, which is a huge challenge, let's say, for most ideal donor profiles. One of their challenges or their concerns is transparency with nonprofits. What is my money doing? What is the organization doing? And so a way to do that is just to feed them all of it. Be transparent. Let them see when you're not quite able to fix something, so that they can be a part of the solution and say,
so many nonprofits are afraid of sharing the less than glamorous, and that's such a mistake. And I think when donors say, where's our money going? It's not so much that they don't want it to go somewhere. It's just that they want to know, right? And it might sound suspicious coming out of their mouths the first time, but it's usually a sign of not enough communication, as opposed to you spending money in the wrong places. I think, most leaders are doing a pretty good job, and they need to trust themselves that they're putting the money where it should go. But then they need to educate and explain to their donors and take them on the journey of, if they didn't understand the problem in the beginning, they're not going to appreciate the solution in the end nearly as much. So as we get close to time, you touched about earlier, you do have to get traffic to content. So, and we've talked a little about this journey. Is kind of consistent organic content enough? Do you need to be sending ads to it? Like, what level do you need to be? Or, and I'm sure it depends on the organization, but how should you be thinking about, like, this ecosystem, if you will, of content? Like, how much needs to be in there, and how much needs to be professionally done or paid? How many pieces? Give people a sense of that so they can start to, like, sink their teeth into it.
Yeah, I'd say no matter the size of an organization, not to be afraid of paid media. That really is, organic content is not dead by any means. It's a really important medium, but that is going to be something that we've mentioned a few times now, caters toward your current audience. That's a really important thing. You need to stay engaged with your current audience, but it's not impossible, but it's virtually impossible to reach a high amount of new potential donors through organic content.
Yeah, that's okay.
That's
Aw,
meatball. But it's almost impossible to reach a brand new audience with organic content. The idea of let's create something viral is really, really hard with the algorithm these days. So paid media, even if you're doing $100, $200, $500 a month, is a way to reach thousands of other people. So we talk about some of these things are really programmatic. So $10 gives you 1,000 placements, no matter where you put it within Meta or even Google placements. So you're reaching 1,000 people with $10. That's a really high amount of people. If you have something that's engaging, can hook someone, that's a lot. And if you have a paid media budget that's $10,000, $20,000 a month, obviously that's an exponential impact. But even at $100 a month, you're able to really target a new audience.
I just want to interject because I've been
second.
thinking a lot about, this language that the marketing industry uses, which I think is not great language. We talk about paid media and organic media. And I think the better way to think about it is there is content and there is traffic. Because the content that you might be sending paid traffic, and then there's organic traffic and paid traffic, right? So you might have this content, you create a video or you create an article, and you might send that out organically to your email list, put it on your website, places where the people know you, find you, and you don't have to pay to get it in front of the people who know you. And then you're also going to send paid traffic to the same content even, right? It doesn't have to be, it's not different content. So content is content and traffic is like eyeballs coming. And if you, like you said, if you want new eyeballs, people who are outside of your network, paid is the way to go, because these places that know those people, like Facebook, they're going to go out and send, put your stuff in front of their eyeballs, and they're going to charge you to do that. But it's not really, I think that paid media versus organic, content, it's kind of confusing because it's all content plus traffic, the eyeballs to see the content.
Yeah, a simpler way to look at that probably is just like existing donors versus new donors or potential new donors. And that's kind of the way you're going to target them. There's no reason to target your current audience with paid media. You already have access to them through either your social channels, your email, an event that's coming up. So use it. Don't overspend in that space. But when you're trying to grow and find that next 10, 20, 30% of new donors, that's a great time to look at some paid channels.
I love it. So as we wrap up, any tips or final thoughts you'd love to leave our audience with? And also, how can they get in touch with you if they're like, yeah, I want to learn more, we are ready to do this?
Yeah, two ways. One, the really practical thing, if you guys are already creating content, just take a look at what you're creating and understand, do you have an ideal customer, an ideal donor, an ideal person that you're targeting? And if not, develop that. We can do that. We do a lot of it for free for our organizations. Even just in a discovery call, we can help you develop that. But if not, develop it internally and then identify what are the 3 or 4 challenges that they are facing. Not necessarily how do nonprofits are not often solving something for their donors necessarily, but do they need transparency? Do they need storytelling? Do they need to find an easier way to get involved? And then target your first content, the awareness-based content, the problem-centric content around those things. So if you come up with 3 problems that your organization is solving, maybe then create 2 types of content for each problem and start there, because that's where you're going to attract people the most. So that's the practical example if you're ready to jump in yourself. And if you're looking to kind of get involved with what we're up to with content strategy, we've created a landing page specifically for this, and it kind of just outlines this as simple as possible. So minivanproductions.com/video strategy. And this will just walk you through it. And what we're doing is free ideal donor profiles and a content strategy. This is something that we could activate on if you'd like to, but it also is just something to give to anybody who wants to walk through this process so they can kind of understand how can our organization make better content.
That's so helpful, because once you have those pieces, then you can get at answering the question, what kind of return on investment could we be getting? And that is going to help you know what it makes sense for you to invest, right? If you are feeling confident, you're going to get 10x return, then by all means, and you're only getting 4 times return out of your gala, although probably if it's a gala, you're, lucky to be getting 2 times the return. Then you might now shift some resources, right? If you don't just have money, cash in the bank to start investing, you can shift away from something that has a lower return and move it into something that's going to have a higher return. That's a great way to go. I talk about this with clients all the time who are focused often on grants, a lot of people, and really they should be focused on major donors. I'm like, grants have like a 4x return. Major donors are going to have like a 20x return. Which do you want? 20 for every dollar, or do you want 4 for every dollar? And then people are like, oh, I want the 20. I want the 20, right? And so what you're saying, video especially too, you're saying is likely to get more like 10x. So you need to be comparing those different options and then making an investment choice. This has been so delightful, Kyler. I really appreciate you coming on today. We're going to put the links to the page that Kyler mentioned in the show notes. And is there a place where you tend to circulate the most? Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, one of those?
Yeah, super active on LinkedIn and Instagram, our organization side on Instagram, and then kind of my personal kind of thought leadership and things about what we're up to as an organization and how we're helping on LinkedIn. So would love to connect with anybody who's curious. We're always hopping on 15-minute, 30-minute calls just to say, what's up? How can we help?
Excellent. Well, it's been such a pleasure, Kyler. And thank you out there for listening, but also for all that you do to make our communities better. Take care of yourself, take time for self-care, and be sure to subscribe and listen to the next episode of Inspired Nonprofit Leadership. Until then, all the best.
You've been listening to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode or the bonus episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review, and be sure to share with your friends and colleagues. Tune in every week for more useful insights and wisdom on nonprofit leadership. Thanks so much for all you do for the communities you serve. Until next time, all the best.